So just to kick off before I actually get into the presentation, I started doing a little demo specifically for game tech, which is sort of the basis for this whole game. So later in the presentation, we're going to be going through and putting that together very quickly, very quickly, sorry.
I can see it. I can see that rapidly becoming very problematic to play for a long period.
It's not meant to be played for a long period. It's meant to explode in your face and then you collapse. That's my aim.
Okay. People will play for a long period.
I've gotten zoned into it for a couple of hours at a time, actually. It's fun. Presentation. Okay, before I kick off doing this stuff, if anyone wants to play along, there's a flash drive. It's got the ShiVa Web Edition installer on it. You're welcome to chuck that on your machine. Also has my archive files on there. So, ShiVa engine. Let's kick off. Firstly, a little bit about me. My name is Emmanuel, if you didn't hear it. My business name is Shot Iris, and I've put together such games as these. The one in the center there is Parsley Panic. That's my main project at the moment. I've been working on that for about 10 months, nearly a year now. But what we're going to be doing is looking at the basis of this Invaders demo after I get through the presentation bit. So we've got to go through a little bit of text first. I'm not going to bore you for too long. So let's get straight into it. ShiVa's been around for quite a while, since 2007. Last year the final 1.9 release was released, and now ShiVa2 is in a rolling beta. If you haven't worked it out yet, this presentation is done in ShiVa. This is Mr. Roboto. He was a free model from BlendSwap, and I've animated him and modified him slightly. Credits given to that in the tech demo. So available targets that ShiVa can publish to, obviously, Windows, Mac, Linux. ShiVa is very popular with mobile developers, so of course we have all the popular mobile platforms available. New WinRT and Windows Phone targets are available, and quite a few web targets. ShiVa has a dedicated proprietary web player that installs as a plugin into common desktop browsers, and we've got a new HTML5 WebGL engine beta that's being developed now, and it's looking really promising. So at the end of this presentation, when I'm done with Invaders, I'm going to put the binary into the authoring tool and spit out a couple of these targets all at once. If you have any questions, just yell out and I'll try and address them as best as I can. I might gloss over a little bit, so. Okay, other targets. RIM, Marmalade, WebOS, and also some last generation consoles. All last generation consoles. Okay, licenses, price points. There is the web edition that the gentleman is going to take off the flash drive right now. You can publish to the web targets for free with no watermarking. The other targets are watermarked. Apart from that, the web edition is the entire basic version of ShiVa, which is this, and that retails for $400. So with the basic edition, it's unlimited to what you can publish to. There are some additional modules in the advanced version that aren't necessary for producing games, but they do help workflow or larger teams. So advanced, additional tools, binary asset merging, integrated SVN, analysis, lots of other stuff. All right, quick note on the plugin system, which we're not going to be looking at. ShiVa supports a industry standard plugin system. It uses C++. Basically, you can compile a DLL or whatever you need for whatever target and import it into the editor, and then export it if you like. You can do that in the basic edition. To actually supply that plugin to someone else, you need advanced for the signing tool. So I've been working in the basic tool for the last 2.5 years now, mostly full time. Standout features, scripting. ShiVa uses an optimized version of Lua, so it's not exactly Lua, it's ShiVa Technologies' version of it. Up until 1.9.2, we'll get to version 2 shortly. There's a built-in terrain editor, one-click ocean, Static light baking, which I haven't really worked with. I do most of my stuff dynamically, just because that's the way I work. Suits the games that I make. Built-in HUD editor is fully scriptable. We'll be looking at bits and pieces of these shortly. Sorry for the doot-to-doos on the film. Hopefully I won't be speaking with a lisp. Built-in optimization, handles auto-batching, runtime object combining, mesh frustum, and occlusion culling. And other awesome things, there's nav mesh, basically everything you expect to be built-in. Built-in networking, the basic, maybe the web edition, I'm not sure, comes with a personal learning edition of the ShiVa server, so you can test networking without actually looking at ShiVa server, and we're not going to be looking at that today. So version 2 is being developed right now, has been in development for quite a long time. People have been gagging for it. So if you're lucky enough to be a customer already, we have access to the beta version. We will look at this for authoring at the end of the presentation. So standout features for me, firstly, the 1.9 series for ShiVa is Windows only editor. Version 2 is going to be cross-platform, so it runs natively on Windows, Mac, and Linux, which is pretty awesome. Also, we haven't seen this yet, but we've heard about it, and it does exist, command line interface. So we can run headless server, for example, and do whatever the hell you want from home to work. And apparently you can even build a game from the command line, so I'm geeking out over that and looking forward to seeing it. Full Lua 5.1 support, and 100% backwards compatibility for older projects.
So what version of Lua is the current one?
I think it's based on 5, but it's a subset of 5, so you don't have everything. You can't do coroutines, for example. You can actually do it, but the C++ exporter or converter doesn't support it. So, yeah, it's all there, but some of it's hidden to the front end users. Integrated authoring tool in version 2. Yes, question?
Good question. Is there student discount prices?
There are bulk educational discounts. As for student discounts, I don't think they offer one off the top. So if we go back to the basic version, you can build and deploy in web for free. So I mean, it's pretty sweet. And basic's $400. So basic edition is very cool. I'm very happy with it. I'd really like to see advanced, but I don't have the money to spend on it. But I just want to see it just so I can play with other things. You don't really need it. I've published for iOS and Android personally, and I'm working on PC games at the moment, so I don't have any problem publishing at all.
Is the free version feature complete other than only being able to publish to the web platform?
Correct. And you can publish to the other platforms, but they'll be watermarked. Quick note on publishing to consoles, that requires additional integration. You'll need to get licenses from Sony or Microsoft or whatever. This is my family. They're my +3. They're going to probably drop in and out while I'm talking. And new features in, thank you, man. New feature in version 2, the editor is completely scriptable, so we can write modules, write our own modules. Thank you very much. Modify the editor's appearance, do whatever you like. I'm really looking forward. We haven't seen this functionality yet. I think scripting is going to be the next portion of the beta that we'll get our hands on, so looking forward to that. All right, tech demo. This is Mr. Roboto. He's going to be very dark, so I'll just switch up some lights. So I've made this specifically for this meeting as well, and I just couldn't stop working on it, so I kept going. So I just want to describe what we're seeing in the scene just briefly, and then I'm going to open up the editor and pull it apart a little bit so you can see how I turn things on and off. So at the moment I've got switchable point lights and direction lights here. I can't remember the total, but I think services can accept up to 32 lights, but you'd want to have a pretty good system handling that. If I turn on 4-point lights here, I've got them all casting shadows at the moment, and it does bog it down with draw calls. Right, let's turn these up. Okie dokie. Let's look at the HUD. So I've built this inside of ShiVa, and you can see I've just made some switches for some post effects here. So if I turn on bloom, I'll turn off the ocean for a tick. Fantastic, that's pretty. If I turn on the ocean, just navigate the camera here, you can see at the bottom there of...
Quite dark.
Yeah, is it really, really dark? Pretty dark. But he's in the dark. Let me have a look. All right, we'll get it into the editor and turn the lights on. I'll just show you this HUD a little bit. You can see him moving, so let me just describe the animation system. ShiVa uses animation clip blending, so it supports up to 8 separate clips being blended together at once. You can see at the moment the slider is sliding up and down as he changes. So if I just nudge up his walk cycle here, you can see that's a full walk cycle now, and I can blend that in with his wait cycle. And if I like, I can blend up the running back to the walk cycle and the wait cycle as well. So you can see he's got a little bit of alteration in his walk and wait. So we're going to have a quick look at that as well. Now the advanced version has built-in AI profilers. In the basic web edition, though, you still have access to a debug API, so I can still note how much memory the system's using or how many draw calls or whatever, and that's running really slow. It must be because of my projector or because I'm projecting, but that's okay. All right, so I'm just going to start up the editor and pull him apart. I've already started the editor, great. Here's a presentation. I'll go a bit more into actually creating a game shortly. I just want to look in here first. So let's just open up the scene. And this is a scene in the editor. And I'm just going to turn on the sunlight so you can see what's going on. This one. Sorry it's so dark. I designed it to be dark, but not as dark as what's on the screen. Also, I'm probably not going to be looking at you guys too much, so don't put your hand up, just yell at me. Alright, so we're in the editor now. To start off with, I've got everything, post effects in the ocean disabled because I switched them on at runtime. So if I wanted, for example, to switch on the ocean now, I can just click Enable Ocean. And if we zoom back, you can see it's actually a global ocean there. And that's not looking too pretty. Well, you can't see too much detail there because I've got the mean height of the waves way down. So let's just turn that up. And the wave amplitude up. And the frequency up. There we go. So while I'm in here, I wanted to show you something. If you didn't notice before, because of the brightness, but I've got these lamps here, the point lights that I'm switching on and off. Each of these lamps have what's called an AI model attached to them. It's ShiVa's way of bundling. It's almost like a class, but it's not a class, but it's bundling a little intelligence module for specific objects or for the user as a whole, for the game as a whole. So if I just look at the attributes on this lamp, each of these 4 lamps have the same AI model on them. And you can see here it's got a linked AI controller. But what I wanted to show you here specifically was I've got this variable called massive flicker. And as an artist, which I'm not, if you didn't want to access the backend or screw around with code, you can actually publish variables from the AI model, to the object. So a person just wants to edit the scene, they can just jump in here, change this off to be.
So are you defining those variables in Lua?
I am. No. They're defined in the AI model. We'll look at that very soon. We'll look at it right now. So let's just open that lamp. This is the flicker light AI model. And you can see, I'm just going to switch these desktops around a little bit. There we go. So that's that massive flicker boolean that I was editing in the scene or on the object. So if you want to define AI variables, you just double click, add them in there, and then define them as you like. So while we're here, we might as well have a look at the scripting interface just quickly. So I've got the lamp in the scene. Basically, I am just defining it as an object in the script here, or getting the pointer to it. I'm getting the light because it's actually a group. So I'm getting the first grouped object, and then I'm just storing a reference to the light, or a pointer to the light. And this is just code that scales the light up and down. If I've got that massive flicker variable turned on, then I'm just changing the settings here to make it scale to a greater degree. Other things that we want to look at in this scene before moving on, just the ambience module, I think. So you saw I turned on bloom before, you didn't really see too much else, but that's okay. So let's say I want to turn up the bloom, then it's just a matter of increasing the intensity sliders here, coloring thresholds, kernel size, and whether or not I want motion blur in there. Fantastic.
Can you do any editing while you're running the game?
If you saw me switching bloom on and off very briefly before, that was direct interface to the API handling the post effects. So yes, you can. You want to edit the scene while in runtime?
Unity has this feature where you basically just play it and it starts running like in the kind of editor window there.
Yep.
You can fiddle with the variables.
Okay, so I've just clicked play. Did I just click play? Now I just click play. All right, so that's the game running. Might as well look at this while we're here. I was going to do it later. Different preview modes for wireframe, Garand, whatever, and runtime mode. So if you create runtime objects, you can edit them in this instance of the scene and then continue playing and they'll remain as they are. Obviously, if you restart the game and recreate the runtime object, it's not going to be like that. But for static objects that are just sitting in the scene, this scene is actually a singular object. The lamps aren't. So I've just paused that. I'll open the scene into editor now so we're no longer running. And I can move that lamp and then play again and there, it's gone. The lamp's not on. That'll be this one. There you go. I'll turn this off. So that's all going now. A quick look at building the HUD for that particular scene or that game. I just need to open the HUD editor, open the tech demo HUD that I produced, and then you can see these are the containers for each of the drawers, and you can drag them to wherever you want. I've got this scripted so that it's going to put it at a specific location, so if I run this now, it'll work, but it's going to look really wacky because it's going to translate from the middle of the screen to the top. I've got that hard-coded, no worries. Yep. So other items, yeah, let's talk about the HUD. There's a bunch of components that you can add into the HUD at any point. So containers are what's containing the actual drawers in this instance, and I've got labels and buttons inside them. And let's say I want to change any of these objects. It's pretty easy, it's just a double click and then I can change the appearance of it here. I'm not sure you're going to, so I need to turn the alpha up, that'd help. Cool. I'm not going to go too far into everything because I'm going to run out of time. But if you have anything specific you want to see while I'm doing stuff, yell at me.
You have to show it, but does it have any 3D UI stuff?
No. You can write it. I can interact with the HUD from the game with a pointer. I can make HUD objects stick to 3D objects in the scene. There's quite a lot you can do. Mostly anything you can think of.
Pretty good considering you get most of that for free.
You can get all of it for free, yeah, if you want. We'd prefer it if you paid money. While I'm at it, I'm not. I know. I was being silly. While I'm at it,
piracy actually occurs. They've worked out because people
can't get access to it.
Piracy works because people can't get the object when they want to pay for it, so
Yeah.
they have to pirate it. So.
Not to mention, I'm not affiliated with ShiVa at all. I'm just a user. I just love the engine. So I'm doing this today. Sorry?
You're just getting a commission.
No, not at all. I'm doing this because mostly to give back to the community, to be honest. I think the engine needs a lot more attention from the game dev community, so if I can get the word out a little bit, I'm happy to do it. I do this every day for fun. Like the butterflies, if anyone saw them before, that was just fun that I did on Friday. Yep.
Just for interest, with the UI, what sort of layout helpers or techniques are there, and what sort of controls are there?
There is snapping. I don't use it. I don't even know how to use it. I think it's a modifier key to actually snap to your grid. You can turn the grid on and off and modify the grid size. And it's not stuff that I do either. I don't know where it is. But we'll move along from that. Layout specifically is mostly just drag and drop. Items will snap to each other. Let's say I'm moving this now, you'll see there's automatic snapping to the container above it. If you can see the little green line, it's pretty faint, but that's just snapped in line there now. You can modify the grid, you can turn off the grid, you can turn on and off highlighting of selected objects. That's all from memory. Anything specific that you wanted to see?
Also
Okay, sure. Very good point, because I wouldn't have thought. Sure, if we edit any module at the top in the general tab here, we've got the origin, so I can set its origin to be center, top left, bottom, blah, 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 and its position. So that's going to stay relative to its current position based on its origin, no matter what the screen size is. So if I just run this, this is going to move. Let me just quickly create another object here. No, we'll use this. Alright, so this one, let's say I want it just to be bottom left, and I want it, well, it was already bottom right and sticking to the bottom right. Make it bottom left, its position's now 0, 0, so when I run this, if I go to full screen, it's just going to stick to the bottom left. It's also possible to modify, to limit whether or not an object, a component scales by the aspect ratio. So you can lock it to a specific ratio of the size or whatever you type in. And that's just a checkbox.
What country does this come
From France.
All right. Do you know how many people roughly would be working on?
In the good old, no, I'm not sure they were good old days, but originally I think they had, well, it was a small team. I think it might have been up to 10, I'm really not sure, but now it's smaller. Very dedicated guys though, and very happy to help. We've got an open Skype channel for users, and we've got the community manager and a developer that drops in, just chats and answers questions whenever, so it's really cool. So that's more or less HUD. These items in here that you saw me switching before is just another component types of slider. Specific components will have different settings based on their functionality. So in this case, it's a bottom to top slider. I can go top to bottom instead, but that's going to break my code. You can add textures, whatever you want. I know it's a pretty basic HUD visually for a demonstration, but I wanted to just show the functionality for the most part. So I think I'm pretty happy. Any questions about what you guys have seen? No? That's great. All right, so we'll get into the practical side of it. What I'm going to do, let me just turn my sound off so I don't blow myself away. And I'll bring this demo back. Yes. All right, so the basis for this game I wrote in 2 days, and most of the second or first day, I can't remember which one, was getting a bloody model to work. So not one of my models, a free model I got from Turbo Squid or something. So we're going to look at creating the basis for this game. I'm going to give you a walkthrough of basically creating a new project, starting from scratch. I'm not going to write the whole thing, obviously, because that'll take forever and I need to think while I type and talk at the same time. That's not going to happen. So I've pulled it apart and got it in specific states. So I can import a state of the project and then analyze it and see what we've got. So, new project to begin with. This is the project list. Current projects that are in the game. In the editor. If I wanted to, I could add an existing project to the game. So here's the complete project. I just select that. I don't want to save that. So that's the one that I just linked back into the projects list. And now I've got that complete game here to edit. We'll get into that shortly and I can go straight into runtime there. So this is the one that we're going to be working on or building today. Can you see screen tearing on the monitor there? I think it's just my machine trying to keep up with the projector. That's all good. All right, so let's begin. I'll try and get through this nice and quick. I actually have notes that I should be referring to because I'm going to jump over something. Bear with me momentarily. You could yell a question at me while I'm looking for pieces of paper. No takers? Didn't buy it. Free model.
When it imports it, what sort of formats is it?
We're going to import that model. I'm actually going to show you importing that model. It supports DAE primarily. It does support drawing files, DWF, AutoCAD DWF, I think, but I don't think anyone uses them. Always DAE. Collider. So is anyone following along? That's going to make you are following along?
I don't have to.
Had to be one. No, that's good. Very good. All right, so before I actually start doing stuff, the files that you grabbed off of the flash drive, you've got archives and resources, yes? So you're not going to have to worry about resources too much. I think the best way to do it is in the archives folder, there's a projects folder, and then you've got these STE files. So good point to talk about them now. STE is a compressed encrypted archive of a game or a project or a singular object that you can just export from the editor at your leisure. So let's say I wanted to import this HUD into a different project. I just had to export that STE. This is also how we export the runtime binaries. But I'm exporting an STE, so click that. And that should pop up a little window, and then I can just import that directly into the editor for another project if I wanted to.
Can you do that actually automatically gathers all resources dependent on?
Yeah, so say I want to export a whole game. Before I click that add to export, and then you get a list and you can drag and drop stuff into there, separate components. If I want to export a whole game, just export game and STE. That gathers everything and sticks it into an STE. Exact same process for SDKs, which is the runtime which we import into the authoring tool for publishing. That's all good. Okay, back to the folders. In that archives directory, projects, if you want to import, not yet, but import that one momentarily, I'll show you how to do it. First off, sorry, we need to create a new project. So in the projects editor, I'm just going to get rid of, no I'm not, we add. And to create a new project, you just need a directory, and I'll call it game tech. Oh, I called it game and hit return. Sorry, not my usual keyboard. Game tech walkthrough. Select that folder. Select right there. ShiVa's already created its resource directory, so this project is good to go. It's new and empty, so there's nothing in here. If you can create that new project with new directory, you good? Okay, if you've done that and you're following along, go to import and archive. I've got it on screen. Yep. And just select that, navigate and select that STE. So go to Invaders Prac. Is it right in front of me? Is this alphabetical? I think I'm in the wrong folder. Oh no. This one, Invaders Prac, archives, projects, state 1. You got it? Or you can import complete if you want and just screw with everything. I'm going to be stepping through the states though.
Okay, yeah, maybe you ask me. Take some time.
That's all right. Okay, so I've got an empty project. So I want to make a new game. All I need to do is create a game object. And we've made a new game. Well, see you guys. So that would be nice if that was the equivalent of the click button make game thing, but it's not really. We've created a game, but it's not going to do anything. In ShiVa, you need to consider, firstly, projects. A project can contain multiple games, and a game is basically a group of linked resources. Okay, so I've just created a game, but nothing's linked to it. So the first thing we need to do is create a new scene, and I'm just going to call the scene Invaders. And that's opened up already, so here's my new scene. While I'm in the scene here, I'm going to import some resources and just give a basic setup for the appearance. So I need to import some new textures for a skybox. So in the resources folder here, I've got textures. And I've got the skybox. I don't need all of these, but I'm just going to import all of these anyway. They were ping files. ShiVa converts texture imports to target files and uses them as a source before it compresses them and creates other versions for target platforms. Import. Okay, so you can see in my textures directory now, they're the 6 skybox textures that I imported. So I want to set up the skybox for the scene in the ambience editor. If I go to sky and then select my textures, I'm basically just adding textures to the face of the skybox, or to each face of the skybox.
When you imported it, actually added it to the textures folder.
Yes.
How restricted is it on that folder structure? Do you have to have textures in the textures directory, or?
Yes, it does that automatically, and you can't change it. As far as I mean, you can get into the guts of the directory structure and drag stuff around, but then you'll probably break the project. So in that respect, it is quite structured. Okay, so there's my scene, and I've got a skybox, so fantastic. Other stuff that we need just to kick off with is a default light set, because the model that we're going to import shortly uses lighting. So if we want to have a quick look at these lights, it's a group. Let's just do this. So I'm selecting singular selection mode, click on the light, and then in the attributes editor, you'll see this. They're common attributes that you'll commonly see on all common objects. But specifically for light attributes, you can see here I can just flick it on and off. Use it for real-time lighting or for static lighting if you're going to do some baking or whatever. And project shadows or not. I don't need shadows in this scene, so I'm just going to turn that off. And that's all good. One other object I need in the scene is just a plane that I'm using to manage bounding areas. And I just call it the guide plane, and it's just a plane that I've created in ShiVa, but to save me time from doing that now, I've just exported that as an archive. So did this just go back to where it's not supposed to go to? It did. Great. Beta's Prac, resources, models, guide plane STE. Okay, so earlier, I prepared this earlier, I just selected this model, exported to STE, and now it's just a straight re-import, so I've got the model back here again. So guide plane is just an invisible plane. I'm going to give that a tag so I can refer to it by name in code. You can see now. You can't see now. You probably can't see now. Now it's got a tag, so if in scripting later you'll see I'll select an object from the scene based on its tag, so that'll be guide plane.
Why a tag and not just an object name, or are they one and the same thing?
I don't know how it's structured internally. If we look at the attributes, you can see the model name. That's the name of the model with the instance marker. Sorry, that's the name of the object, that's the name of the model, what type it is, whether or not it has a parent. Why tag, I'm not sure. I think the guys wanted to deprecate the use of tags, but I like them. It's easier for me to see what's happening in the scene, so I just use it. Why not an object? Well, what if I had two of the same object, I suppose, and you need to start looking at arrays or markers on each object? Yeah. Anyway, what's your name, sorry, the gentleman following along?
Chris.
Chris, are you happy?
I'm happy. I'll just jump to the final and I'll spot you.
That's cool. So, I'm happy with this. I know I'm forgetting something from this scene though. Yeah, no, I'm good. Okay, so we've got a scene. It doesn't do anything. What we need to do now is add a main AI to it. So under the edit menu here, user main AIs, I can just create, or I could go create resource AI model. But for now, I'll just do it over here because it's going to plop it into the game automatically. So if you look at the game tab here, user main AIs, this is where where ShiVa is going to look for AI models, look for initialization functions to actually kick off the code. It's a lot more simple than what I'm making it sound. So I'm just going to create a new one here called invaders main. And now I'll switch over to code view, and you can see I have the empty AI model here. So what I need to do first is add an on a init handler. I'll add these and then I'll have a look at the AI model structure a little bit more. So on init is the first handler that's going to be accessed by the runtime. So what I need to do, hello, come in, game tech.
Thank you.
All I need to do to kick off the game, well, you know what? I don't have to do anything. I can just click play now, and that's the runtime. It's not doing anything. So no errors, it just works. But obviously we want to see that scene. So what I need to do is application.set current user scene, and then the name of the scene, which is just invaders. So now if I click run again, nothing happened. It might have been preparing the textures. While I'm at it, these textures are quite huge. I think they're 2048s, and I've got 6 of them in the scene, so every time I open that, it's going to try rendering them, or what's in Frustrum at least. So let me just get away from code briefly and show you texture optimization. So all of these are huge. You can see here they're 2048 by 2048, and they're about 12 megabyte target files. I don't want them that big for now because they're going to take a little bit of time. So let's say I want to compress them. I'm going to limit the size. I'll just limit to 512. Okay, so now ShiVa is going to compress and make new versions of these files internally for this particular export profile, which we'll look at export profiles later if we get the chance. So now if we try that again, that comes up almost immediately. So there's the scene. I can publish this now, put it in the authoring tool, and spit out runtimes for Windows, Android, whatever you like. Obviously, it's not much of a game. Bear with me for a tick. Okay, so previously you've seen me import STEs now. What I've done is prepare another STE just for debugging information. All it does is create a HUD object and then write out the draw calls and tries and whatever that you saw in the tech demo. So to grab that, that's sitting in...
Code along with that as well in the exported file?
Yes, everything. I'll show you that right now. AI models only, I think. Yeah, so I've got this one here. Invaders debug. So I want to import this one. Actually, this this STE archive only contains code. If I look in AI models, this is the one that I just imported. So to use that in the game as a user AI, I just drag it into that list. Before I click run, I'll just open this one up to show you here. And you can see it's got on init and on enter frame handlers. And what this does is just creates a new HUD component. So you don't actually need to use the HUD editor to do anything. You can do it all in script if you really want to. I prefer visual editing most of the time. But if you've got a really complicated thing, like if those drawers that were popping in and out of the tech demo, I basically scripted all of the button functions, so just identify by the button and then do a specific action. So HUD new component, I'm setting the colors, the size, and text options for a label. And then on enter frame for this handler, getting a pointer to the component based on the name that I stored up here in this AI variable. And then I'm getting debug information just by using the built-in functions.
So it's storing each of your handlers in a separate file, a separate Lua file?
Okay. Handlers themselves, okay, let's look at the AI model as a thing. This thing is an AI model, right? Internally it's stored as a singular file. And I think it might be binary. I've never tried looking at them, but inside that it stores all the information for this particular AI model. So which handlers should be linked to it, or which should be there, what variables are in it, blah, 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 blah. Each of the scripts are actually saved separately. So the AI model refers to a script. And this...
Can you edit the scripts externally to this program, or are they just in text files?
You can, yeah. It's not officially recommended, but I've done batch file replaces on them just on the script directory myself. Yeah, it works. So it stores Lua files in the resource structure, or in the resource directories. When you compile, it creates Lua bytecode, sorry, so LUB files I think they are, so yeah. But yes, you can just dig straight into the scripts and do whatever you like. Anyway, that's all that's in that AI model. So if I just run now, default, now I wanted you guys to see this, I knew that was going to happen. This is what happens in that script. I'm referencing a font that I'm going to use to draw into the HUD component, but the game doesn't know what the font is. So that's not really a problem. That's not a problem at all. I wanted you to see this error just so I could show you how to fix it quite easily. So in the HUD I define the font to be used is called default font, so that just ships with the game. Every new project has that in it. So to link it, I just need to drag that into the resources directory there. I'll stop this because it's in error and click play, and now you can see the little debug HUD there. No VSync, so it's trying to flicker above 60, but I'm not sure how it limits it in editor, but it's always limited to around 60 FPS. Okay.
What it's using on the hood, like DirectX or OpenGL?
I do. The editor I'm not 100% on. For Windows, it's always OpenGL, unless you're running Windows 8. It falls back to DX11. Yeah.
Quick question.
Yep.
So, I'm also a Microsoft student part, so I have to teach you about Windows 8 apps. How do you export a ShiVa game to Windows 8 as an app?
That's not something I've done personally. I've seen Windows 8. My brother can attest to this. I don't like it. How do you do it?
It looks really easy and a good thing to be able to say, well, hey, if you don't like Unity, there's this other thing you can use.
I know. Look, for Windows 8, the general process is you need a Windows 8 machine to compile it. You need to be running Visual Studio 2013. And it's a very similar process to what I'll be showing you later. It's a matter of exporting an STK instead of an STE file. So it's a compressed encrypted binary file that gets put through the authoring tool, which generates C++. You import the project into Visual Studio and punch it out, and you have to sign it in Windows 8. Yep. It's pretty straightforward. Once you've done it once or twice, I'm sure it's a breeze. Okay, so importing models. I'm just looking at the clock. All right, so we need a model. This one that I got from TurboSquid is is a Viper from Battlestar Galactica. I spent a long time in Blender trying to optimize it. It was horrible. But I've got it down to a singular object. Where am I going? It's taking me back to this directory. Invaders Prac, resources, models, and now we've got the Viper DAE. So I can just open that. I have the option to import animations, materials, whatever else you can see on the screen there, and prefix the file internally if I choose, but that's all just fine as is. So this is going to create a mesh at the moment that ShiVa will use. Well, it creates a mesh that ShiVa uses based on the collada file. So that's imported there. If I just double click that, it opens up in the model editor. And it's all magenta because it doesn't have a material. Okay, so I'm going to add a material to it now. I could create the material resource and drop it on if I wanted to, but sometimes it's easier just to use the picker. It says there's no material, so I need to type in a material name. Let's just call it Viper. Great. So now if I get the material editor up here, I can change the lighting on it. I'll change the diffuse color. And nothing happened because I don't have lighting enabled for it. Okay, so changing the diffuse color again to whatever you want. Fantastic. But ugly as hell, so we need some textures. So I'm going to import some more textures. Got to the right directory that time, it's nice. Not the normal map because they need to be imported separately or have a particular flag turned on. So I'll import everything else apart from the normal map. Go back, import that normal map there, and I need to check that flag. I can just use that one. Okay. So general directory, I have to make a little apology. All my desktops are a bit squishy and not in the right place. This isn't my main machine, so it's a bit of a trial working out what's supposed to go where. So texturing here for this material that I've created for the Viper, there's two effect maps available to drag textures to, as well as normal map and specular map support. So I'm just going to drag the textures on there to begin with, and then we'll have a bit more of a look at it. So drag and drop for the actual diffuse. texture. Now I've made that diffuse color blue, so it's being modified, and I don't want that, so let's just do this.
Does ShiVa come with a set of built-in shaders?
It does, that's correct. There's no, you can't. I wish I could extrapolate on that some more, but that's it. So version 2, while we're on it, is supposed to have more support for particular shaders. Whether or not we're going to have full access to writing and compiling our own, I'm not sure. Chances are it could just still be, it's going to have to be backwards compatible, so it could still be this material setup, but with more options, multiple effect maps or whatever else, I'm not sure. Don't have that info yet, I'm afraid. All right, so Viper has a texture. Let's give it specular and normal maps. So they just drag and drop as well. Fantastic. Can't see anything. Why is that? Because I only have vertex lighting turned on for this model, so per pixel lighting. And I have the diffuse color set all the way down, so now that needs to come up. That's getting a bit better. And for this particular model, I want to use an emissive map. So to do that, I set the effect here from simple to burst, and then in effect map 0 here, sorry, effect map 1, just drag and drop that emissive map there, and then I can control the intensity of that effect by the slider. This is all scriptable as well. So yeah, that's not too bad, I guess, for a demo.
So just to ask, that intensity you've got on the emissive on that material, is that something you can modify on a per object basis, or is it material whiteness?
We do have material overrides. When you edit a material on a specific object at runtime, I think it's only that instance of the material, but I'm not 100%. I think it is. Yep, so yes, you can. Yeah, sorry about the wireframe. As I said, this model is horrendous. If you have a copy of it now, don't publish it. It's bad. It suits the demo though. All right. So we've got this model. This is going to be plopped into the scene like you saw before, and I want to be able to control it. I need to do some hit detection, and I need an AI model on this as well so I can receive events. So how do we do that? Well, firstly, ShiVa has these things called sensors. I want to add a box sensor to this object. Great, so I'm going to be using this for raycasting in code. For this particular object, you can see now I have the sensor roll down selected there. We can assign particular IDs to sensors so you can determine which object you're hitting or which sensor type you're hitting or whatever. You have box and sphere shapes, so you can set the size and the offset and whatever you want. For now, I'm just about to import and overwrite this whole thing anyway, so that's it. Right now, if I plop this in the scene, I can do a one-line raycast function and determine whether or not I'm hitting this object, returning a handle to the object, and doing whatever you want. The other thing we need on this is an AI model. So to do that, we don't have any else available in the project yet. So I need to create a new one, AI, create AI. And we'll call this Invaders Viper. I think I misspelled that. That's okay. Okay, so we have a new AI model. Now this is at the object level, so in this case, because it's sitting on an object, if I need to get a handle to the object it's attached to, then I can just go local equals this.get object. And then from here I can do back to material overrides, for example, shape.override mesh subset material whatever, ambient, or if I want, I can go back and change the texture maps. Sorry, the textures in effect map 0, 1, everything. But we don't need that. At this point, let's quickly look at, no, I'm going to import. Then we can look at it. We're going to look at input, user input. Let's say that. So I've done a bit of work there and it's all terrible and I don't like it. So I'm just going to import an archive now. Actually, I'm just going to close all. Whatever. Import archive. Have I said anything stupid or confused anyone yet? No, great. Silence means no. So I just imported an STE that I had prepared earlier that contains most of the work that I've already done, plus some other scripts that I'm not going to spend time scripting right now. So if we go back, I'm going to open that game up again and click run. Great, nothing's happening. I imported the wrong archive. I want state 2, which is the one that has the model in it. Okay, so now if we look at the Invaders Viper AI model, you can see I populated it with variables here, booleans, and a couple of numbers, and an object type that just stores a reference to itself, just so I don't have to type out a particular function all the time. In addition to that, it has init code now, where it gets a handle on the scene, it gets a handle on that guide plane that I plopped in before, it rotates itself, so this only happens once on initialization of the object. Set up animations we'll look at right now. That's what I didn't show you on the model, I didn't show you animations. So you remember Mr. Roboto and his blending animations? Well, I sort of cheated a little bit for the Viper because I didn't really want to code the rotations or the banking in the scene. I wanted to cheat. So I've added an animation controller. No, I haven't added an animation controller. Okay, well I've got now. To do that, I need to import some anim clips, which are just DAE files that contain animation information. So, I'm back in that place, aren't I? Invaders Prac resources models. So these are 3 separate animations. If you want, you can hold all of your animations in a single DAE file and then address them by frame and split them up that way. I don't like working that way, especially if you've got a really long one and you only need to edit a portion. It's just a massive pain. So I do them all as separate files. So there's 3 anim clips there. Because I have this open, it's holding.
The animations in Blender?
I did. And my personal workflow or pipeline is Blender export as FBX, and then I use a third-party tool because I don't like screwing around with Collada so much. I use ShiVa3D. It's really awesome. And I exported DAE from there. All of the animations are exported separately along with the model as a separate object.
Can you create the animations directly in ShiVa?
Yeah. You can script animation. You're talking about skinned animation, bones.
Like an animation editor of some kind, is there anything like that?
Okay. With script, you can edit the translation rotation of skeletons. It's easy to do. It's hard to get right because obviously it's skeletons. In ShiVa, there is an animation editor, but everyone knows it's bugged and it's on the way out. That's the anim clip editor here, so I can open one of those clips that I just imported and you can see the graphs there. You can edit in here, but I never use it. I don't recommend it. And that's probably the only thing inside ShiVa that I'd recommend not using. Yeah. Alright, so there's imported files. Let me just get that model back up. So this doesn't have an animation controller yet. To create one, I can right click, create a resource, whatever I want, or I can just drag and drop these clips. And that's created a controller automatically called the same as the model. So that's that anim clip. It's now attached to the model. I also want these left and right animations. So now they're attached. And if I want to preview, there you go, let me loop it. Super, really interesting, not really. Static is just static. I imported a static animation. It has 0 frames, it doesn't do anything. I've only done this because I cheated. I'm actually going to be blending the animations together later on, so I need something to blend back to. So I've got this static one that doesn't do anything there. So I'll be blending left and right into 0. That's about it for the model. Right, back to the code. So that was set up animations. If we look at the function for that, basically all it does is say, you remember I mentioned ShiVa handles up to 8 blending layers. So I'm saying in blending layer 0, I'm going to use animation 0. In blending layer 1, I can use animation 2. That's all that does there. And then I can set specific modes for each clip. So these are both set to playback mode once, where the one that I'm not editing is set to loop by default. We can also script in blending right here, set default blends for particular shapes if you want. By default, layer 0 is always at 1 and the remaining layers are all 0. So if I put this in a scene now, which I'm about to, it's just going to sit there doing nothing because it's referring to what's in layer 0, which is my static animation. Okay. Too much talking. What else is in here? Okay. Okay, physics. ShiVa uses the ODE physics engine, which is I think it's open source. It's free anyway. It's not bad. It's not as comprehensive as other engines may be, but it's certainly usable. A couple of our users, I mentioned the plugin system earlier. A couple of users have made plugins for bullet physics. I know we've got some people working in PhysX, doing cloth simulation, that sort of thing. Apparently ShiVa3D might be coming with some built-in cloths, so I'm looking forward to that. That'd be awesome. But yeah, so I guess the point there is if it's not already in here or what's in here is not suitable, you can rewrite whatever you want or write additions. So that just creates a new dynamics body and sets all the flags on it, and then I'm storing a reference to the body in here. So what's going to happen at runtime when I'm controlling the object, I'm going to add force to the dynamics, and the physical model is just going to match a translation of that dynamics object. Why did I do it this way? As I mentioned before, I wrote this in 2 days and I just powered through it. So I probably should have been scripting translation, but I couldn't be asked, to be honest. So I just plopped dynamics objects on just about everything in this game. So another good reason not to publish it. It's not good. It's a good example, not a good game. Right. Okay, at this point I'm going to import my state 3 archive because it has my input code in it. I think. Is that already done? That's already done.
So each of these archives is basically a complete copy of the game in a different state?
That's correct. Well,
so you just,
in the case of...
save them off as you're developing it?
No.
So,
No, I'm not that. I don't think that far ahead. I completed it and then pulled it apart. I pulled out parts that I didn't want you to see at particular states. And then I went through trialing it and figured that I couldn't talk that much. So now I'm jumping over quite a lot of things. If you want to have a look, in here I've got...
You can make these available online?
Absolutely, I intend to, yes. If you look in this directory here, these are AI models only, so I've exported them specifically so I can do a quick import of AIs if I screw everything up. But in this projects directory, this is the whole game in its particular states. Yes, this will be all online. So I'm just going to overwrite everything. The reason this is taking a little bit of time is, if you remember before, I modified those textures, changed the maximum scale, maximum size to 1024. So now it's kept a reference to that information, so every time I re-import that texture, it's creating new versions of those downsized or downscaled textures. Yeah. All right, so let's look in main now. There's a new AI model here called Invaders Input. So this is my input handler AI. I like to keep them all contained in a single area or AI model. So in here, booleans that we've seen before, just left and right, whether or not I've sent the stick, gamepad stick, left and right controls. And that's just a string that defines, just to hold the name of the AI that I'm sending events to later on. It doesn't do anything if you don't script it to do anything. So in ShiVa, as with everything else, or game dev at least, I think there's 5 ways to do everything. Everyone has a specific way of working. This is just how I work. So let's look at these input handlers now. I've got key up and key down handlers for the keyboard. So if I look at key down, how do I detect what key is being pressed? That gets done automatically by the key code argument that comes through from the engine. So all I'm doing here is getting handles on the user, the object in the scene, which you haven't seen yet, and I've got just shortcode for the AI model name. So all I do here is determine what key is pressed. So that's input.key constant. That's an engine constant, left and right, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm just setting flags. And then I'm sending an event to the Viper object, which is in the scene. I've got a handle on that up here. And that's its AI model name, which is up here. And I'm sending the event called that. Now if we look at the the Viper AI model has this onGetDirection handler. So that's what that's addressing there, and I'm sending through the direction from the input, or from whatever the user pressed. So in the invader's Viper handler, I'm determining firstly what direction is being sent through. I'm checking whether or not I'm already going left or right. I'm not going to teach you guys how to script because you're probably better than me. Basically just setting flags. And then the Viper has this function that runs every frame called update dynamics. It determines which direction is currently on and adds force in that direction. So if I run this now, I'm already drawing invaders. If I run it now, that's just exactly what I just explained. All right, we'll get back to invader creation shortly. As far as gamepad goes, it's exactly the same. Well, almost exactly the same, and definitely as easy. So I'll bring up that handler in the input AI, joypad button down. I've just got a little comment block there for which Xbox input is which button ID. Then I'm just testing the ID and doing the exact same thing. Now, is it similar for stick? Just testing the axis of the stick and then sending the direction event back through to the Viper. And there it goes. I don't have any projectile set up yet, so he's not shooting.
So is there a regular time that developers are on their Skype channel?
All the time.
All the time.
We've got a good few US people, Euro people, so there's usually always someone on. Yeah, everyone's very happy to help too. I think it's, yeah, they're all pretty good guys. No, they're all very good guys, very good guys. All right, so we've got the Viper in the scene. I didn't show you how that's been placed in there. That's just set up now in the main AI in its init function, I think, where I'm creating runtime objects here. That plops the Viper in the scene. So alternate to that, I could open the scene, drag and drop the model in there, and then whatever, put a tag on it, or loop through all objects in the scene, get a handle, determine what's what. Doesn't matter. This is the easy way to do it though. So I'm just doing scene create runtime object, and that's just a reference to the object model name. So that's linked in the game there. You also saw the invaders shooting across the screen there. They're also all runtime created. That's the invader particle dummy object here that's linked to the game. So we're going to have a quick look at that one now. That is this guy. So you can see it's nothing, it's not a model at all. I've stuck a particle system on there. ShiVa's particles are impressive, and they just keep getting better. So let's look at how to set one up. In particles here, so here's some I prepared earlier. Two in fact. The first one that shows the invader body is just called invader 1. Now if I click play in here now, there he goes. Sure, let's make runtime. So all this is a sprite sheet. You didn't see me import this because I jumped over it, and you can't see that there. It's two sprites next to each other in a texture sheet. So I'm controlling the number of columns and rows in the particle setup here. Obviously that's going to look terrible. Let's make him 1, so we're only looking at one particle. All right, so I'm determining or setting the initial number of particles to be generated and the new number per second, new percent per second. And that's giving this almost okay impression that it's a singular object. It's sort of blurring in and out. So I've got additive blending on for this guy too. So down here I can determine the lifetime of each particle. Aspect, we can jump over that. Initial speed from the emitter. These guys, there they go. They'll come back shortly as soon as they die. Rotations, whether or not to use gravity, that should work. There they go. And a friction constant. And now we've got these color keys. Sorry, we've got color, opacity, and scale keys, which the length of each state is determined by these time keys here. If you split these proportionately, it's going to be in quarters. Obviously, you can speed up particular keys just by editing the sliders there if you wanted to. So changing the colors. There we go. Now these are desaturated textures, so I can change them to whatever I want. I like to work this way a lot because it allows for quite a lot of customization inside ShiVa. You could, of course, import fully colored textures if you want. You can do anything. I can determine the opacity for each key. Whether or not he's just going to blink up. Yeah, there he goes. Size at each key. Yep. And the global scale. That's fantastic. Now, that shows about half of the particle system. The API's been extended significantly. We can create turbulence and vortex fields now, attractors. What else?
So
cool
when
stuff.
You're actually having these rendered in the game, do you have to script each particle as like each invader to be where it is, or?
To be where it is?
Yeah, so
if we,
like you've got a massive block of them moving around.
Yep.
Obviously some of them are going to be dying off when they get shot and stuff.
Each of the, you can see I've modified the particles so they all look a bit wonky now. Each object that you see on screen now is a singular emitter.
Okay.
Just because that's the way I chose to do it.
Could you like have one particle system and then address each particle to script it as an invader, or do you have to do it that way because you can't access each particle?
No. Yes and no. In a singular particle system, you have access to each position or each translation of the object and its scale and the actual emitter's global opacity. You can't position them yourself. You can find out where they are, but you can't. You can't translate them manually. So if you remember the butterflies that I had up before, each of those butterflies, there's two things happening. My brother really wants to see the butterflies, so I might as well do this now. Just while we're talking about particles, side note. If you look here, that's going to work definitely. Okay, so these guys here, the orange and blue ones that come up, they're two separate emitters because I wanted them different colors, and that's me using a desaturated texture again. Then you've got these ones that occasionally fly across the back here. They're two separate ones as well, the blue and orange that just went off that way. So that's two emitters, there's two emitters here, and then each of these ones here, I'm creating each butterfly as a singular particle emitter that's up off the screen. When it gets to a particular position that I'm accessing via code, I'm creating a new particle with a different texture. And then when the flower shakes, that's a new particle again for each of those. Experiments, fun. Okay. All right, back to the object, or the model. No, wrong one. So back to this guy with the particle system that I broke. Yeah. What to do? Oh, the only other thing on here, apart from that particle, is the sensor. For optimization purposes, using this many sensors in a scene is not a great idea. Like I mentioned already, I coded it extremely quickly. I'm doing a lot of things very badly, so a lot of bad raycasting, sensors everywhere. Obviously you can do it, and it does run quite well on PC. I wouldn't want to publish it to Android though. So this one has a sensor, and it's using the same ID as the Viper sensor. Best practice would be to offset that by 1 and have a different sensor ID for a different group of objects or whatever, but For my purposes, this was fine. So what's happening in the scene? See the red lines flashing up occasionally? That's my bad code. So it was a bit of a brain fart moment. How to determine the lowest object in that block of objects and then generate a projectile from that invader. So I'm just choosing a random point along the bottom of the guide plane, shooting a ray up, hitting that sensor, and then if it hits one, then I'm creating a projectile from that point. I didn't really want to talk about code that much. As for the actual movement, the block movement, when I create these at runtime, I'm just parenting them to an object and I'm moving that parent object left and right. Oh, we've also got this very pretty particle system falling down from the top. It has a vortex attached to it. You can't really see that effect at the moment. When we get into the first person thing, you can sort of see it swelling around a little bit. A little bit of subtlety doesn't help sometimes. I'm not very good at it. I'm pretty good with that. We have invaders. We're actually quite a long way through. This is great. Okay. I'm going to import state 4 and just have another look at that HUD, or HUD in general. Just close everything. There's only 5 states, so don't worry. 5 states and complete. And then I'll author and then I'll be done. So I'm just going to overwrite those textures again. As mentioned, it's going to recompress whatever I set to compress.
How do you find it scales to larger games?
Well, that invaders thing that you saw, the full color one, I want that in the Rift. That's actually my primary purpose for ordering one. Yeah, once I started on this demo, I just couldn't stop, and then I saw it all lit up, and I want to see it in VR. Very well. I think the main problem with any engine is the art that you put into it, and I think that goes for every system. If you put shit in, you're going to get shit out. So if you have good art, yeah, it's very scalable. As far as ShiVa is concerned, there's quite a few optimization options I mentioned before, like auto batching and runtime combining, whatever else. That comes down to good coding as well. So I mean, if I had Leonardo da Vinci helping me out, maybe I'd make a masterpiece, but I don't.
Maybe you have a flying machine by now.
Okay, so I've just imported state 4. You can see the Viper now has this blue thing on top of it, the shield. That's just another particle system. I've set a custom axis on the particle, so it's always pointing in the same direction, no matter the rotation of the parent object. Nothing special about that, it's just another particle. And now we've got projectiles. So what I'm doing with projectiles, I was actually going to rewrite this to use translation yesterday because it would be much more optimized, but I just ran out of time. Each of these projectiles has a dynamics object on it as well. I'm just using that to translate them. And also very bad code, I'm also doing raycasting from each projectile, determining whether or not I'm hitting or in range of a invader sensor. When it is in range, all I'm doing is switching off one particle system and then switching on this explosion particle. And probably the only good code in my little project here is when I switch on this explosion particle, I'm putting it into a table and constantly checking to find whether or not there are any particles left alive. Once it's dead, then I kill the object from the screen. So let's look at that explosion, just because explosions are cool. And that's called Invader's Block. A bit more interesting of a particle system. Yay. So I've got that set to time limited duration. So as I mentioned, because it's only running for a specific amount of time, no new particles will be generated, so I can test whether or not it's still alive or not. So if I turn off time limited, it's just going to keep pumping them out based on the settings here. Fantastic. So this again is just a 2-sprite texture sheet. We can make it really blinky if we wanted to. Yeah, it's kind of blinky. And I've just set the colors down here. So I can make this a, whatever, blue explosion. That'll do. Cool. Now, yay, blue. It's like being at the fireworks.
It's very reminiscent of like the geometry walls.
Oh, I didn't, sorry.
Maybe slightly more crazy.
Yeah, I didn't turn it back on time limited, so it just kept going there. That was awesome. Can I edit this at runtime? Yep. So just open up the scene again. Actually, I didn't even need to open the scene. Let's not open the scene. So that's running. If I want to edit this particle system, I can't edit the colors without pausing the scene. So if I open this up, the scene pauses. Let's make them purple. That'll do. And just run again, then it should be good to go. And that level of editing works the same with textures. You can re-import mesh while it's running. I think that works. Definitely textures, particles. Cool. All right, so now you can see I've added a HUD. We did have a good look at it before. What's happening now? You see the progress bar just moved, the yellow thing at the top left. I need to restart it so it gets hit some more. With the invader projectiles, I'm just determining a hit on that Viper sensor, the box that we added before. And then I'm updating the HUD item, the progress bar. Never get hit when you want to get hit. There we go. There you go. There you go. So looking at that HUD, let's have a look. It's called Invaders HUD. How about that? That life bar is just a ShiVa progress bar. And it's not particularly nice. I just smashed it on there. All I've done is set it to be left to right with a maximum value of 255. So now in the code, that's in main. I've got this function called update enemy fire. So these projectiles that are dropping down, being stuck in a table, I'm checking them every frame, whether or not they're in range of the Viper sensor. So when they are, all I'm doing is, let's see, this is a raycast, so seeing get first hit sensor with ID. And then you just set the origin and the direction of the ray and the range and the ID that you want for the sensor. I think there's about 9 different raycast functions built in. Okay, so if I hit it, I think I am just destroying the object. No, that's a new one, sorry. That's where it creates and where it sends it up. This is casting down. This is where I'm actually hitting the Viper. So if I do hit it, I'm just killing the projectile. So I'm removing it from a table, destroying it from the scene, and sending an event to the Viper to its on-receive hit handler. So from there, of course, you can code whatever you like, but we were talking about HUD, so I should probably show that. Invaders Viper, on-receive hit. I think that's the nose particle emitter, just a special effect. All I'm doing to update the HUD is I've got a handle to, or sorry, a local variable called, an AI variable called life. It starts out at 100. There. And all I'm doing is just modifying that value and then sending this through HUD set progress value and then, yeah, the new value, and that's it. So editing HUD in script is really quite easy. It can become, well, everything's as complicated as you make it, I suppose. We didn't look at the projectiles. We didn't look at the code for the projectiles either. In that input AI that I showed you before, now I've hooked it up so when you press the spacebar down, it's going to create new projectiles. So that's this here. So if the key code that comes through from the engine is space, then if I have a handle on the Viper, I send an event through, sorry, I'm not even sending an event, I'm setting a variable on the Viper to be fire. And that's it. So in the Viper AI, update weapon, I'm checking if that fire variable's down, and if it is, then I'm just creating more runtime objects at particular bone positions and shooting them up. Yep. For interest, those projectiles are handled similarly to other particle objects on there. They each have a particle attached. It's actually a primitive made in ShiVa. Let's have a look. Projectile sphere. So this just has an emissive material on it. No textures. So I've just got the emissive lighting turned up. And it also has a click, SFX, so it has this particle system on it. So I'm using that time-limited duration for the particle to determine whether or not the projectile should be destroyed again. So that's its particle, sorry. You can't really see it here because it's static. It's also really, really small. Let's turn that off and let's give it some speed just so you can see. It's a lifetime. There we go. That's basically that. Once you zoomed in and on a nice black screen, you can see a little trail coming up behind it. Once it stops generating, then the projectile is destroyed from the scene. Cool. Well, I've jumped over a lot of stuff and we're just about at the end. The final part is, I'm going to close all again. The final thing I want to look at, for the most part, is AI states. So, with an AI model, we have on init and on enter frame. You don't have to have on init and on enter frame. You can just use an AI model as a almost as an object, just to set and store variables if you like. You don't need on init, don't need on enter frame. What you can have as an alternate to either of those is to use states. So for each AI model, only one state is active at one time. We're going to see this very soon, so you can follow along. Here we go. I'll just open up main. Okay, so you see I have these states here. I've got this little orange one here. So when I start a state, or when I start this AI, it has an initial state. In this case, it's idle. So idle doesn't do anything, it's all empty. I can send through commands to this AI model to go to a particular state. When it does that, when it enters a state, the onEnter handler for that state fires. In this case, when I start the game, the invaders state is being triggered, the onEnter is firing, and this .do create invaders function is running, so that's what's creating all the invaders coming across the screen, or this way for you guys. And then it's going to on loop, so this fires every frame, so it's a secondary enter frame. So if you look at this main AI now, I don't have any enter frame handler here anymore, I'm just using the states. So why the hell would you do this? Well, why wouldn't you do this? This allows me, for example, to what you're about to see in the invaders state, make the camera go to a specific position. If I change state to flight, which you're about to see shortly, you'll see the camera flies in. That's just handled by different camera code in a different state. So how do we do all this? I want to add some sounds. Sounds are pretty fun, but we're talking about states. State's self-explanatory. I got someone nodding, we're all good. Okay. So quick overview again, in on init, when this AI initializes, it sits idle. On init just says go to invaders. So then this all fires and it continues along until it's in such a state as I tell it to do something else. Let's look at sounds briefly. Firstly, I want to look at some music. So to attach music to a game, we open up the scene. And in the ambience module, we've got music. And I've got two music files sitting here. I probably should have done this in the last iteration of the project, but that's okay. Let's just import music so you can see it happen. Sound is handled two different ways inside ShiVa. One is music itself, or called music, and the other is called sound. When you use music, the data is streamed into the game, it's not loaded into memory. When you use sound, each sound is loaded into memory. That's the only real difference between the two, apart from the available functions that you can use. So I'm just importing an MP3 there. I've got the option to switch to mono and change the sampling and quality. What would this use internally? I think it uses lame, I'm not sure. So just import. That's going to ask me to overwrite because I already have this here, but that's fine. This is doing conversion. There we go. So now if I want to play that in the scene, I put it back where I took it from. Ambience, music, so that's just a drag and drop. And now in my init code, I've just got this music.play. I've got a handle to the scene. What index of music do I want to play? I'm going to have to put that other one back in because that's 0 based. There we go. And that's a fade time. So now if I play this and turn this on, nah. Now the only question is, did I save the scene when the music wasn't there? I did. That's great. I want this one. No, I want that to be there. That to be there. Can't drag and drop here. No, I got that wrong. I did want them that way. Sorry. Oh, goodness. I want that, and then I want that. So that one line command kicks off the music. Too easy. So for sounds, similar process, except I'm not attaching them to a scene, I'm attaching them to an object. So to do that, let me just grab these files. They are actually already here, but that's fine. I want to show you the import process. Sounds, select them, open, have the option to change the channel samples again, import. So that's the 3 sound files there. Now to actually use these, I need what's known as a sound bank object. So I've already got one. The same as creating any other resource in ShiVa. It's just create and then drag and drop the sounds into this sound bank here. So I can remove that, for example. Yup. And if you want to preview them, great. So how do I drop this into the scene? Well, I need an object, so I just create a helper. It's like an empty, and I call it what? I think I've already done this. That's okay. Sound bank, I can filter here. So that's one I created earlier. So if I need to attach the sound bank, it's drag and drop. And that's good. Now if I get attributes up here, I can see the sound controller is active. I have the option to enable spatialization if you want. In this case, it's going to be a static object in the scene, so there's not much of a point doing it. Yep, I am using it in my upgraded version of Invaders. It's kind of cool. So you can set distance and roller for spatialization there if you want. That's all fine. Let me just chuck this in the scene. It's a helper and I can't see it. Oh, that was a sound bank. I need the bloody model. There we go. There you go. Why can't I see it? That's it there. I think it's invisible. Why is it invisible? I don't know. I've got access to it here anyway. Let's set a tag on it. 2. Okay. And now all I need to do to access that, I've already made a handler here called onPlaySound. And it's trying to access a local object, sorry, AI model object variable called SoundBank. Ah, I'm already creating it at runtime. So, exact same thing, instead of dragging and dropping it into the scene, I've linked it to the resources. I'm creating it at runtime and storing a handle to it in the local AI. So now what's going to happen is when I send an event to this AI on play sound, I'm just sending the index through sound play, whatever. So now, as you heard earlier in the day, too easy. Right. Now we've had a little sidetrack with sound and music. We can go back to states. I've scripted this, I won't go looking for it. I've scripted it so that once all these invaders here are dead, it's going to change state. So what's happening, or what's going to happen when I change the state, basically all that happens is the camera moves to a different position, like that. And now I'm creating invaders every couple of seconds from far up the y-axis, and they're just shooting down towards me. I've also crossfaded the music. And crossfading music is as simple as, in the start of the flight state here, no, actually it's transition, my bad, my memory. That. So we've already had music playing, now I've got music play different index over 5 seconds, so automatic crossfade into the new track. Can I preview that quickly? Sure I can. Let's turn that back on. Now I can stare at this for hours. I'm only doing this for the purpose of crossfading audio, I assure you. I'm not really having fun at all. Okay, so here's a transition state. Crossfade's happening. There you go. Cool. And that should be hooked up to the gamepad now too. Too easy. So, there's a bunch of other scripting I've done in here, but I don't think we've really got time to handle it. I'm going to show you authoring now, and then we'll be good. Authoring can be extremely easy, or you can make it as difficult as you like. ShiVa allows me to output binaries almost, I won't say instantaneously, but very, very quickly. From there, well, you have the option to export to C++ and do your own modifications as much as you like. While we're on that note, you also have the option to script almost entirely from C++, so you don't have to work in Lua at all, but it's not very common for people to do that, and I think we lose some optimizations when you do that. I'm not experienced in that area. Let's export this one, so I won't modify it again. So I'm just exporting invaders to a local folder. I'm exporting SDK, and now we've got a particular export profile to select. Export profiles are configurable. Let's look at textures specifically. From here, let's say I want to edit the texture options for a specific profile. So from here I can say, for the Android profile, maximum scale is X. For default, maximum is whatever you want. It's pretty straightforward. So internally, ShiVa is keeping different versions of all these files for you. Back to exporting, export game, SDK to default. So this is going to pack and encrypt it, or sorry, compress and encrypt it. If there are any textures, say right now I export for Android. Well, Android has specific texture format requirements, so ShiVa does that internally. But because I haven't generated them in this project yet, when I go through export, it's going to do that automatically, so exporting can take a little while. Because I'm using the default profile, all the textures are already done. We've been running them in the editor, so it's all good. So that's exported this file here called invaders SDK. I'm going to show you two separate authoring processes. One's the old way, one's the new way. So this is going to be, this is ShiVa authoring tool. This comes bundled with ShiVa up to 1.9.2. So this is the final version for the authoring tool now. So all we need to do is turn on Windows authoring. We need to select that SDK. I can specify icons here. I don't know what startup pack is, funnily enough. If I had, who wants to see C++ export? No one, good. If I had exported C++, all I need to do is drag the source files into here. When you do that, when you export C++, it exports the SDK, which is more or less empty, and it exports a directory full of your converted C scripts. So all you need to do is drag that folder into here. Because this is a complete SDK, you don't need to worry about it. I can specify window sizes here if I want, but I'm just going to run in full screen. I have the option to turn off post effects, whatever. You can handle most of that in the config file for Windows as well, which we're not going to look at. So all I need to do is click build and wait for half an hour. No, I was lying. It happens pretty much straight away. So I've got a zip file here. I'm just going to extract that to Invaders Windows. That's here, and there's my exe. Yay! There's my sound. Yay! Invaders. All right. Pretty straightforward. So that's the old authoring tool. Now we get to look at something really, really cool. I don't want to save that. I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to now just minimize it. Let's start up the beta version of ShiVa2. So if you recall, I mentioned earlier that the unified authoring tool application is gone. ShiVa2 now has an integrated authoring tool. So from here, you're not even going to have to go through that export process or step anymore to SDK. You can actually export a complete game that's in editor straight out. But we don't have that functionality here yet because this is a rolling beta. All I need to do for Windows, same process, is select that SDK here, and similar options down here. Let's go to, and same process, just click compile and you can watch the log roll past if you choose, and that's already exported it uncompressed because I selected application rather than zip, so that's this one. And if we run that, that's going to run just as well. Here, I'll prove it. Okay, so a quick overview of ShiVa2. I can't really look at too much because it's highly limited. For the last 2 months or so, we've been testing authoring. So we're testing singular modules. I think we're going to have access to the scripting modules next, so looking forward to that.
So how long's the beta going for?
Until I get all the tests done, I suppose. Yeah, I don't know.
Did they give any idea of a release date?
No idea. No idea. We need more testers though. What can we do in here? Well, I could give you a tour of ShiVa2, but we're pretty much just going to be looking at documentation available inside the editor. That's all cool stuff. I want to look at authoring. So I just punched that out for Windows. Well, let's say I want to do Android. I'll select that same SDK. I'm going to export an APK. Usually in production, probably always in production, you'd want to export an Eclipse project and then do your edits in there for whatever you want. But for testing, I can just export directly to APK here. I've already tested in here, so I have some data filled out. Basically just setting it to landscape. And that's all good. Let's say I also want to export Linux binaries. I need that SDK again. Export a zip for Linux. Cool. Let's change the name of that. I can't remember if I have older export tests in there or not. Let's say I also want to export HTML5. I'll call this one Invaders 2 as well, just in case. I can specify window sizes here if I want. It's the WebGL window inside the browser. That should be fine. Flash, let's do Flash as well.
So you're going to export all these at once?
I'm going to export all these at once. And I managed to test this yesterday. This is Google Native, NACL. Let's do that one as well. And hey, if this doesn't error, then my day's pretty successful. Other options here you saw in the initial presentation. So we can't build for Mac and iOS on Windows because you need Mac-specific libraries which you can only handle on Macintosh or get on Macintosh. I don't know. So we can't do those two. We've got RIM target, Windows RT, Windows Phone both require Windows 8, which I don't have and don't want. So you've got the other targets there, WebOS, Marmalade, blah, 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 and the console targets, which require external libraries for it to run or be accessible. So that's my compile button for the currently selected one, which would be Windows in this case, and this is compile all. I think I checked the box that said open the window when you've done it. And I think this does it automatically. So the first thing we should see, it's building Java at the moment. We're using Java. So we should see an APK pop up. Android is actually the longest process. So it references Ant and Cygwin in the background. So as for setup of this is a clean installation from a couple of days of ShiVa2. All I need to do is open up the settings file and input my paths to Ant and Cygwin, SDK, NDK, and Flex if you're doing Flash, and Chrome.exe if you're doing NACL, and then it'll work. So there's the APK. I'm going to prove that it works as well.
Did you say they're setting up to be able to do this with command line as well?
Yeah. Totally geeking out for that, hey? So I've got a, what is it, Samsung Galaxy Tab 2 here.
So what's the major advantage of being able to do this from the command line versus the other?
I could not have a job and go to a different job and play games and make games from my job. I mean, how cool would that be?
You make an automated build system, scripted.
Automated builds, yeah.
And I mean, there's just a lot of people just like working with command line. It's just a lot you can do from there.
I just want to do it just to see it. Here's one I prepared earlier, but I'm going to copy and replace over it.
If they've got Linux builds and you can run from the command line, you can have a server farm that has virtual machines on it, and you can have an automated build system that when somebody commits to your version controls, pulls out a job to a virtual Linux box that will do a build of every single platform to check they will work. That's why command line for Linux is good.
ShiVa2 is available for authoring testing natively on Linux now and Macintosh. This is installing, I think.
In fact, if the future of games is, Ash took that earlier, is games as a service running in the cloud, being able to build in the command line on a Linux box is exactly what we would do.
ShiVa devs are doing some really funky stuff. They're doing, they've been working with NVIDIA Grid as well for streamed games. I don't know how that's going to come out, but it sounds really interesting. So that's it running. It gets about 20, not even 20 frames on that. You've got to imagine there are 130 draw calls in this at the moment, so you can understand why that's running really slowly. Oh, by the way, I think this should just come back. There's a little script. Is this finished? This is finished. Let me show you this code. It's on init. I just wrote this last night, just really quickly so I could, it's in my complete function. Don't worry. I've got a little, say I wanted to display a particular HUD on Android, all I need to do is obviously have a reference to that HUD in the game resources, and then I can just say if system.get OS type is system, sorry, I'm not going to talk, Android, yep, then do whatever. So in this case I was doing HUD.new template instance, and then putting my Android HUD on there was just a couple of buttons so I could actually control that, but I'm using a different version of the project, not the complete one. Okay, so what did we just export? There's Windows, but we've already seen that, so that's kind of boring. Let's see, Invaders 2. This is NACL. To use this locally, I need to install it into Chrome as an unpackaged extension, which works. I tested it last night, but we're not going to do that now. Here's the Linux export, Invaders 2. Inside the data file, data folder, we've got 32-bit and 64-bit binaries. I've tested Linux on VM and it works fine. I've had a friend test one of my games on some Debian flavor, I'm not sure, but he was happy. So that's Invaders. These are all sitting in my little exports folder here. Here's HTML5. I can run this locally in Firefox. It's coming, the HTML5 engine is coming along really well. It's got a ways to go, but man, I can't use Gamepad. It's looking cool. There we go. You've got to remember again, it's 133 draw calls running in JavaScript. Yep. broke it. There he goes. Flash.
So who's going to go home and start working on space invaders?
Space Invaders 2.
Yeah.
The Flash engine, or the Flash ShiVa engine, takes a little while to initialize, but it does work. I actually tested all these exports with the tech demo, Mr. Roboto, in that massive scene, and everything worked. I was really surprised because it's a really heavy scene. Now, it's still initializing, so it's a lot of JavaScript running. I think it pops back in a second. What else is in here? Oh, there goes Flash. Cool. Awesome. What else did we do? That was it. That's it. I'm done. Questions?
You'll probably hang around for a few minutes anyway if anyone's got anything.
Yes, absolutely. All the stuff's going to go online, so we'll put a link on it, link to it from Game Tech Brisbane. Yeah, go.
What's your initial ShiVa?
Say again, sorry?
Is your ShiVa is a pro version or personal or
This is basic edition.
basic?
Yeah. So there's three, you weren't here at the start, hey, there's 3 different editions. The web version's free, and you can publish to web for free with no watermarking.
The one in your computer is free?
I'm using the basic edition. It costs its retail prices. Do you have a PC?
400.
Yes. Good memory. Do you have a PC with
I
you?
have a personal license.
Pardon me?
I think I have a personal license.
It's a single user license. The basic edition, they're all supposed to be single user licenses, so it's supposed to be one license per seat.
You porting so many platforms?
Sorry?
Are you porting so many platforms from basic?
Oh yeah, that's all coming from basic. Yeah, I'm not doing anything special at all. I have access to the ShiVa2 beta version because I'm a basic customer. I purchased it before the end of 2012, I think was their cutoff. Yeah, that's the only reason I have access to this, as everyone else who's purchased a license has access to it as well. It's really cool.
All right, well, thanks, Emmanuel.
My pleasure. I hope I didn't